Okay, good afternoon. Let us continue our discussion sa obligation. Okay, bali ito na yung chapter 3, book 4 of the Civil Code. Okay, and I'm referring to the different kinds of obligations. Okay, now may tinatawag tayong primary classification of obligation under the Civil Code. Bali ito yung pure, conditional, obligation with a period, alternative, facultative, joint, solidary, divisible, indivisible, saka obligation with a penal clause. Okay? Now, yung secondary classification naman, I'm referring to unilateral, bilateral, real, personal, determinate, generic, positive, negative, legal, conventional, penal. Kaya tandaan nyo na lang yung primary classification kasi pag hindi siya nag-fall sa primary classification ng obligation under the Civil Code, then automatic secondary classification siya. Kaya tandaan nyo yung primary classification, ito yung pure, conditional, obligation with a period, alternative, facultative, joint, solidary, divisible, indivisible, saka obligation with a penal clause. Okay, now there is a question before in the CPA board exam. Ang question, the following obligation are immediately demandable except, bali nilagay letter A, pure obligation, letter B, obligation subject to resolutory condition, letter C, obligation subject to resolutory period, and of course, letter D, obligation subject to suspensive condition. Of course, the answer is letter D. Kasi pag pure obligation, okay, immediately demandable yan. Ito yung obligation na walang condition, walang period, kaya immediately demandable. Yan yung Article 1179 ng Civil Code. Kasi ang sabi doon, every obligation whose performance does not depend upon future or uncertain event or past event unknown to the parties is demandable at once. Ngayon, pag obligation subject to resolutory condition naman, okay, paki-check nyo yung other term niya, yung tinatawag na condition subsequent. Kasi sa resolutory condition, yung obligation existing and demandable na. Kasi yung happening ng uncertain event is just a mode of extinguishment. Example, I will give you 10,000 per month until you pass the CPA board exam. Kaya lumalabas today, you can now demand for 10,000 per month. Pero once na okay fulfilled yung okay condition, okay, then ang effect, the obligation of the debtor is extinguished. Pag obligation subject to resolutory period naman, or sometimes ang tawag is in diem period, yung obligation immediately demandable na. Okay, meaning existing and immediately demandable siya. Kasi yung arrival ng day certain is just a mode of extinguishment. Example, I will give you 10,000 per month until December 31, 2020. Kaya lumalabas today, you can now demand for 10,000 per month. Pero once nag-arrive yung day certain, which is December 31, 2020, then the obligation of the debtor is now extinguished. Pero pag obligation subject to suspensive condition kasi, okay, wala pang existing obligation. Because the obligation would arise only upon happening of the uncertain event. Example, I will give you 50,000 pesos if you pass the CPA board exam. Kaya lumalabas today, wala pa akong existing obligation because my obligation would arise only upon happening of the uncertain event, which is to pass the CPA board exam. Now, what are the distinctions between a condition and a period? Now, first distinction, sa condition, pwede raw siyang future or pwede siyang past event unknown to the parties. Pero pag period, always future. Second, in condition, merong uncertainty whether the day will come or not. Pero pag period, these are certain to happen although it may not known when. Now, example, okay, I am indebted to you, okay, for 50,000 pesos if X die. Okay, is that a condition or a period? Answer, that is an obligation with a period. Because debt is certain to happen although it may not known when. Pero kung sinabi kong, okay, I will give you 50,000 pesos if X die of TB, then that is a condition. Because there is now uncertainty whether the day will come or not. Okay, kasi marami ang cost of debt. Kaya ang test lang natin pag condition, may uncertainty. Pero pag period, certain to happen, although it may not known when. Meaning, siguradong darating, ang hindi lang natin alam ay kung kailan. Third distinction sa condition, meron siyang retroactive effect. Okay, kasi ang sabi ng batas, sa Article 1187, okay, an obligation to give daw, once the condition is fulfilled, it will retroact at the time of the constitution of the obligation. Ibig sabihin, pag obligation subject to suspensive condition, at ito ay obligation to give, once the condition is fulfilled, meron siyang automatic retroactive effect. Pero sa period, okay, subject to suspensive period, nag-arrive yung period, wala siyang retroactive effect. And last distinction, sa condition, pag ang fulfillment daw ng condition is depend upon the sole will ng debtor, okay, the conditional obligation is void. And I'm referring to a potestative condition depend upon the sole will ng debtor. Okay, ang effect, the conditional obligation is void. Kasi ang reason dito is that, okay, the debtor is not serious about his obligation because the debtor can prevent the fulfillment of the condition. Okay? Kaya the obligation would not arise. Okay? Kasulad dito, sinabi ng debtor for instance, okay, I will give you 50,000 pesos if I travel to Baguio. Di ang gagawin ng debtor, he will not travel to Baguio. Kaya this is just a joke. Kaya siyan ay potestative condition depend upon the sole will ng debtor. Pero pag period, pag ito raw ay depend upon the will of the debtor, okay, yung obligation is not void. Okay? In that case, the court is authorized to fix the period. Now, what are the kind of conditional obligation? As to effect, pwede raw siyang suspensive. Paki-check nyo yung other term niya, bali condition precedent or condition antecedent. It means sa suspensive condition, the obligation would arise only upon happening of uncertain event. Okay, I repeat ang example, I will give you 50,000 pesos if X pass the CPA board exam. Kaya lumalabas today, I have no obligation, but once X pass the board exam, okay, the obligation would arise. Pero pag resolutory or condition subsequent, yung obligation ay existing and demandable na. Kasi yung happening ng uncertain event is just a mode of extinguishment. Okay, example nga nito, I will give you 10,000 per month until you pass the board exam. As to form, pwede raw siyang express or pwede siyang implied. Pag express, yung condition ay clearly stated. Pag implied, the condition is merely inferred. Possibility. Pag possible, it means the condition are capable of fulfillment. Like to pass the CPA board exam, that is a possible condition. Pero pag impossible, pwede raw siyang physically impossible, pwede siyang legally impossible. Pag physically impossible, it means yung fulfillment ng condition, okay, nakadepende sa nature daw ng thing. Okay? Pero pag legally impossible, it means yung fulfillment ng condition ay contrary to law, moral, good custom, public order, or public policy. Okay, tulad nito, halimbawa sa physically impossible, I will give you 50,000 pesos if you can swim across the Pacific Ocean. Meaning from nature ng condition, hindi talaga siya capable of fulfillment. Pero pag legally impossible nga, it means yung condition by nature are capable of fulfillment pero contrary siya to law, moral, good custom, public order, saka public policy. Example, I will give you 50,000 pesos if you kill Y. Of course, killing Y is possible. Okay? But that is contrary to law. Okay? Now, under Article 1183 kasi, ang sabi nyo, di ba, impossible condition which are okay contrary to good customs and public policy and those prohibited by law shall annul the obligation which depend upon them. Okay, pero sabi dun, okay, if the obligation daw is divisible, the part thereof which are not affected by impossible or lawful condition shall take effect in accordance with this code. Okay, pero last paragraph, negative, impossible, or unlawful condition shall be considered not having been agreed upon. Example, I will give you 50,000 pesos if you pass the CPA board exam, okay, or okay, you kill Y. Another 50,000 pesos if you kill Y. Okay, in this case, divisible siya. Kasi yung first part is valid, pero yung second part is void. Pero kung sinabi kong I will give you 50,000 pesos if you pass the CPA board exam, okay, and you kill Y. In that case, indivisible siya. Kaya ang effect, the entire conditional obligation is void. Another example, I will give you 50,000 pesos if you will not kill X. Not to kill X is a negative, impossible condition. Okay, in that case, the obligation is immediately demandable. You simply disregard the condition. Okay? I-disregard mo lang yung condition dito. Kasi nga, negative, impossible, or unlawful condition shall be considered not having been agreed upon. Now, as to cause or origin, pwede raw siyang potestative, casual, or mixed. Now, pag potestative, it means yung fulfillment ng condition, okay, depend upon the will of one of the contracting party. Pwedeng sa debtor or pwedeng sa creditor. Pero take note, potestative condition depend upon the sole will ng debtor, the conditional obligation is void. Pero pag potestative condition depend upon the will of creditor, valid. Now, bakit void? Pag potestative condition depend upon the sole will ng debtor. Reason? Because the debtor is not serious about his obligation. Okay? Because the debtor can prevent the fulfillment of the condition so that the obligation would not arise. Therefore, this is just a joke. Example nga natin, I will give you, okay, 50,000 pesos if I will travel to Baguio. In that case, anong gagawin ng debtor? The debtor will not travel to Baguio so that he has no obligation. Kasi nga yung debtor can prevent the fulfillment of the condition. Pero kung halimbawa ito ay potestative condition depend upon the will of creditor, valid. Example, I will give you 50,000 pesos if you travel to Baguio. Now, ang tanong dyan, yung creditor ba, interested siya sa fulfillment ng condition? Of course, the answer is yes. So that the obligation would arise. Kaya yung gagawin ng creditor, i-fulfill niya yung condition para mag-arise yung obligation. Okay, sa casual naman, depend upon chance or will ng third person, valid. Pag mix naman, partly upon chance and partly upon will of third person, valid rin siya. Pero take note, Potestative condition depend upon the sole will ng debtor, the conditional obligation is void. Pero that is true only pag subject to suspensive condition. Pero pag potestative condition depend upon the sole will ng debtor, pero yan ay subject to resolutory condition, perfectly valid siya. Kasi ang reason, pag resolutory, existing na yung obligation. Kasi yung fulfillment ng condition is just a mode of extinguishment. Pero pag suspensive kasi, the obligation would arise only upon happening of the uncertain event. Kaso, kung potestative condition depend upon the sole will ng debtor, the debtor can prevent the fulfillment of the condition, okay, so that the obligation would not arise. Kaya ang effect, the entire conditional obligation is void. As to mode, pwede siyang positive. The condition requires performance like to pass the CPA board exam. Pag negative naman, it means the condition, okay, requires omission, like not to pass the CPA board exam. As to numbers, pwede raw siyang conjunctive or disjunctive. Pag conjunctive, there are several conditions, okay, imposed, and all of which must be complied with. Example, I will give you 50,000 pesos if you pass the CPA board exam and the bar exam. You pass the board, but you fail the bar, I have no obligation because you need to comply both conditions. Pero pag disjunctive, there are several conditions imposed, pero the fulfillment of one is sufficient. Example, I will give you 50,000 pesos if you pass the CPA board exam or the bar exam. You pass the board, but you fail the bar. Or you pass the bar, you fail the board exam, okay, the debtor is still liable. Kasi fulfillment lang ng one condition, sufficient na para mag-arise yung obligation. Divisibility. Pwede raw siyang divisible or pwedeng indivisible. Now, pag sinabing divisible, it means the condition are capable of partial performance. Pero pag indivisible, it means the condition are not susceptible of partial performance. Now, ito laging tanong to sa CPA board exam. Yung Article 1180. Ang sabi diyan, when the debtor daw bind himself, okay, when his means permit him to do so, the obligation shall be deemed to be with a period, subject sa provision ng Article 1197, wherein the court is authorized to fix the period. Now, ano bang reason dito? Bakit hindi siya conditional obligation? Kasi ang reason daw dito is that what is left to the debtor is not the payment itself, but only the period of payment. Okay, that's why the court is authorized to fix the period. Now, i-check mo yung similar phrases niya. Okay, number one, when I can afford it, when I'm able to, little by little, from time to time, at any time I have the money, as soon as possible, in partial payments, when I'm in position to pay. Manonotice nyo, lahat itong similar phrases, the debtor is willing to pay. What is left to the debtor is not the payment, but only the period of payment. That's why the court is authorized to fix the period. Okay? Parang katulad yan, little by little. Oh. Paano pag ang utang ng debtor kay creditor 1 million? Magbabayad ka little by little. Is the debtor willing to pay? Yes. But what is left to him is not the payment itself, but only the period of payment. That's why the court is authorized to fix the period. Okay, question. As a general rule, can the court fix the period? The answer is no. Especially when the period was not intended. Kasi ang reason dyan is that the court cannot, provide a period, if the period was not intended. Because the court cannot make a contract for the party. Kaya meron lang dalawang instances wherein the court is authorized to fix the period. Number one, when the parties failed to fix the period, but the period was intended. Ibig sabihin, merong intention yung parties na mag-fix ng period, pero hindi na na-fix yung period. That's why the court is authorized to fix the period. Okay? Tapos second, when the period is depend upon the will of the debtor. Okay, now tingnan nyo to class ha, example lang. Halimbawa si A and B, ang kanilang obligation, ang obligation ni A kay B ay pure. No condition, no period. Kaya ano siya, immediately demandable. Can the court fix the period? The answer is no, because the period was not intended. Kaya hindi niya pwedeng lagyan ng court ng period. Kasi walang intention yung party ng period. Kasi nga, pure siya. It means, okay, no condition, no period. That's why dapat immediately demandable siya. I repeat, the court is authorized to fix the period only, okay, kung merong intention yung party na mag-fix ng period, pero hindi lang nila na-fix. That's why the court is just following the intention of the party. Okay, now punta tayo sa Article 1184 saka 1185. Mapapansin mo, yung Article 1184, combination to ng positive condition tapos may period. Okay, basahin natin ha. The condition that some event happen at the determinate time shall extinguish the obligation as soon as the time expires, or if it has become indubitable that the event will not take place. Okay, example, the debtor is indebted to the creditor to deliver a specific car, provided the creditor should pass the CPA board exam, okay, before reaching the age of 25. Kaya mapapansin mo, meron ditong positive condition, tapos may period. Okay, kailangan niyang pumasa before ma-reach niya yung 25 years of age. Okay, scenario number 1. What if the creditor passed the CPA board exam at the age of 23? Ang question kasi dito, na-fulfilled pa, okay, na-fulfilled ba dito class ng debtor, okay, yung condition. Okay? Now, of course, the answer is yes. Okay? Kasi di ba, he passed the CPA board exam at the age of 23. Now, since na-fulfilled yung condition ng effect, the obligation becomes effective. Pero let us modify. Okay, what if, okay, the creditor passed the CPA board exam at the age of 27? Ang tanong, na-fulfilled ba yung condition? Okay, the answer of course is no. Kasi even though he passed the board exam, pero after 25 na. Okay, kaya lumalabas non-fulfillment ito nung positive condition. Kaya anong effect? Since non-fulfillment ng condition, the obligation is extinguished. Now, another scenario. What if the creditor, okay, die at the age of 23? Now, ang question dito, ano siya? Effective or extinguished? Okay, when the creditor die at the age of 23, automatic non-fulfillment siya ng positive condition. Because if you die, you will not pass the board exam. Kaya ang effect niya, extinguish. Yung sa Article 1185 naman, almost the same siya ng 1184. Pero instead na positive condition, gawin mo lang siyang negative condition. Okay, example. Okay, the debtor bind himself to deliver to the creditor a specific car, provided the creditor should not pass the CPA board exam. Kutsa masamang tao to. Not to pass the board exam. Okay? Before 25 years of age. Okay, meaning pwede kang pumasa. Okay, after. Okay? Pero hindi siya pwedeng before. Okay, first illustration. First scenario. Assuming the creditor passed the CPA board exam at the age of 23. Na-fulfilled ba yung condition? The answer is no. Because he passed the board exam within the prohibitive period. Okay, di ba prohibited siya? Kaya lumalabas, since non-fulfillment ng condition, extinguish. Okay, second scenario, what if the creditor passed the board exam at the age of 27? Okay, na-fulfilled ba yung condition? The answer of course is yes. Kasi he passed the board exam, okay, not within the prohibited period. Kaya since na-fulfilled yung condition, then it becomes effective. Scenario number 3, what if the creditor die at the age of 23? Okay, of course, when the creditor die at the age of 23, automatic the condition is fulfilled because he will not pass the board exam okay before 25. Kaya ang effective kaagad siya. Okay, now sa Article 1186 naman, sabi diyan, the condition shall be deemed fulfilled when the obligor voluntarily prevent its fulfillment. Bawa, the debtor bind himself, okay, to deliver to C a specific car provided, okay, he pass the CPA board exam. Okay, ang problema, okay, nung date ng examination ng board exam, okay, the voluntary did not take the board exam. Okay, umabsent. In that case, automatic, the condition is deemed fulfilled because the debtor, okay, voluntary prevents its fulfillment. Okay? Prevent niya yung fulfillment ng condition. Kaya lumalabas liable si D na i-deliver kay C yung specific car. Okay? Now, let us proceed now sa Article 1187, 1188, saka yung Article 1189. By the way, pag binasa mo yung 1187, basahin mo yung 1188, saka 1189. Now, ano bang sabi ng Article 1187? The effect of conditional obligation to give, once the condition daw has been fulfilled, shall retroact to the day of the constitution of the obligation. Ibig sabihin, pag obligation subject, okay, to suspensive condition, at ito raw ay obligation to give, at okay, the condition is fulfilled, meron siyang automatic retroactive effect. Sabi niya, nevertheless, when the obligation imposes reciprocal prestation upon the parties, the fruits and interest during the pendency of the condition shall be deemed to have been mutually compensated. If the obligation is unilateral, the debtor shall appropriate the fruit and interest received unless from the nature and circumstances ng obligation, it should be inferred that the intention of a person constituting the same was different. In obligation to do and not to do, the court shall determine in each case the retroactive effect of the condition that has been complied with. Now, may manonotice ka. Okay, sa Article 1187, meron lang siyang automatic retroactive effect pag ito ay obligation to give. Kasi pag obligation to do or not to do, wala siyang automatic retroactive effect because the court shall determine the retroactive effect of the condition fulfilled. Sa Article 1188 naman, the creditor may before the fulfillment ng condition bring the appropriate action for the preservation of his right. The debtor daw may recover what during the same time he had paid by mistake in case of suspensive condition. Okay, ngayon, balikan natin to. Sa 1189 naman, okay, during pendency kasi ng fulfillment ng condition, okay, yung object dito, pwede siyang ma-loss, pwede siyang ma-deteriorate, or pwede siyang mag-improve by nature or time. Ang mag-a-apply, Article 1189. Now, ano bang sabi ng Article 1189? When the condition has been imposed for purpose of suspending the efficacy of obligation to give, the following rules shall be observed in case of loss, deterioration, or improvement upon the thing. Number 1, if the object is lost without the fault ng debtor, obligation ng debtor, extinguish. Number 2, if the object is lost through the fault ng debtor, okay, the debtor is liable for damages. Number 3, if the object deteriorate, okay, without the fault ng debtor, the creditor shall suffer the deterioration. Number 4, if the object deteriorate through the fault ng debtor, the creditor has two remedy. Number 1, rescission plus damages or fulfillment plus damages. Number 5, if the object improves by nature or time. Okay, any benefit shall accrue in favor ng creditor. And number 6, if the object improved at the expense ng debtor is given only the right of a usufruct query. Okay, bali, ito yung summary niya. Nasa notes ninyo to. Ngayon, gawa tayo ng illustration. Okay, pagsamasamahin natin yung tatlong provision. Yung Article 1187, 1188, saka Article 1189. Okay, example, the debtor bind himself to deliver to the creditor a specific parcel of land, provided the creditor should pass the board exam. Assuming the obligation was constituted on 3/1/2020, but the condition was fulfilled only on 10/18/2020. Ang sabi kasi ng batas sa 1187, di ba? In obligation to give once the condition is fulfilled, it will retroact at the time of the constitution ng obligation. Kaya once na fulfilled yung condition ng 1018, automatic magre-retroact siya ng 3-1 as if the condition was fulfilled on 3-1. Pero ang question kasi dito is this, balikan natin ha. Kung ito ay condition, it means merong uncertainty whether the day will come or not. Pwedeng mangyari to, pwedeng hindi. Kasi kung yan ay certain to happen, hindi yan condition. That is an obligation with a period. Kaya ang question dito is that, before fulfillment ng condition, can the debtor dispose the object? Okay, bago ma-fulfill yung condition to pass the board exam, can the debtor dispose the object? The answer of course is yes. Why? Kasi wala pang right ang creditor whatsoever. Kasi ma-acquired lang ng creditor ang personal right from the time that things to deliver, it arises. Kaya ibig sabihin, hanggat hindi na po-fulfill yung condition to pass the board exam, pwede i-dispose ng debtor yung object. Pero ang problema, pag ang debtor dinispose yung object, at later on na fulfill yung condition, wala na yung object. Okay, tama? O the obligation becomes useless. Kasi wala nang object. Kaya papasok dyan yung Article 1188. Na ang sinasabi, the creditor may before the fulfillment ng condition bring appropriate action for the preservation of his right. Okay? Kasi otherwise, kung walang nakalagay sa Article 1188, useless yung obligation. Kasi kapag na-fulfill yung condition, baka na-dispose na ng debtor yung object. Kaya kung kayo yung creditor dito, anong gagawin mo before fulfillment ng condition? Hindi pa pumapasa ng board exam. Okay, pwede ka mag-apply sa court na ito ipa-annotate sa title na ito ay subject sa condition. Para in case later on, okay, dinispose ng debtor yung object, okay, okay, at later on, na-fulfilled yung condition at nag-retroact dito, may notice ang third person. Kaya may better right pa rin ang creditor. Okay, kasi lumalabas, okay, yung third person is acting in bad faith. Sabagat may notice siya na ito ay subject sa condition. Ngayon, gawin natin mas specific. Okay, what if halimbawa, okay, yung debtor, ang ginawa niya, nakipag-transact siya kay Mr. X na i-deliver yung object ng 5/1, 2020. Okay? Ang problema, yung debtor, okay, dineliver kay Mr. X ng 5/1. Later on, yung condition na fulfilled ng 10/18. Di nag-retroact ng 3/1. Ang question, sinong may better right between creditor and Mr. X? Kasi di ba sabi natin kung nag-retroact dito as if the condition was fulfilled on 3/1. In that case, may better right si Mr. X. Bakit? Kasi ang sabi ko, dineliver kay Mr. X ng 5/1. Kaya ang na-acquired ni Mr. X noong 5/1 ay real right. Ang na-acquired ng creditor nung 1018 na nag-retroact ng 31 is only a personal right. Pero let us modify. What if ang ginawa ng creditor on 4-1, take note 4-1-2020, pina-annotate niya sa title na ito ay subject sa condition by exercising the right under Article 1188. Pagdating ng 5-1, okay, dineliver kay Mr. X. Pagdating ng 1018, the condition was fulfilled, din nag-retroact ng 3-1. Sino may better right? Answer, creditor. Sapagkat buyer, si X, in bad faith. Kasi as early as 4-1-2020, okay, na-annotate na ito ay subject sa condition. Kaya nung dineliver kay Mr. X ng 5-1-2020, meron na siyang notice na ito ay subject sa condition. Pero let us modify again. What if binenta at dineliver kay Mr. X ng 5-1? Pagdating ng 6-1-2020, in-exercise ng creditor ang right under 1188. Pina-annotate sa title na ito ay subject sa condition. Okay, later on, pagdating ng 1018, the condition was fulfilled. Di nag-retroact ng 3-1. Ang question, sino may better right between creditor and Mr. X? Answer, si Mr. X, sapagkat buyer siya in good faith. Kasi as early as 5-1-2020, wala pang annotation sa title na ito ay subject sa condition. Okay? Kaya protected si Mr. X dito. Now, let us modify again. Okay? What if nakipag-transact yung debtor na i-deliver kay Mr. X tong object ng 5-1? Pagdating, pero walang delivery. Pagdating ng 1018, the condition was fulfilled, therefore nag-retroact ng 3-1. Now, ang question, sino ang may better right between X and creditor? Answer, creditor. Because of the retroactive effect. Kasi since parehas naman walang delivery, lumalabas, may better right yung creditor. Kasi because of the retroactive effect under 1187, as if the condition was fulfilled on 3-1. Pero kung dineliver pa rin kay Mr. X, may better right pa rin si Mr. X. Kasi wag mong paghaluin ang real right sa personal right. Kasi ang personal right na acquired siya from the time the things to deliver it arises. Pero ang real right na acquired siya from the date of delivery. Ngayon, etong object, before fulfillment ng condition to pass the board exam, pwedeng may mangyari dito, di ba? Pwede siyang ma-loss, ma-deteriorate, or mag-improve. Ang i-apply mo, Article 1189 ng Civil Code. Kaya sabi ng 1189, when the condition has been imposed for purpose of suspending the efficacy of obligation to give, the following rules shall be observed in case of loss, deterioration, or improvement upon the thing. Number 1, if the object is lost without the fault ng debtor, obligation ng debtor extinguished. Number 2, if the object is lost through the fault ng debtor, the debtor is liable for damages. Number 3, if the object deteriorate without fault ng debtor, the creditor shall suffer the deterioration. Number 4, if the object deteriorate through the fault ng debtor, dalawang remedy ng creditor, either rescission plus damages or fulfillment plus damages. Number 5, if the object improve daw by nature or time, any benefit shall accrue in favor ng creditor. At number 6, if the object improve at the expense of the debtor, he is given only the right of a usufructuary. Now question, ano ba ang right ng usufructuary? Okay, sa usufruct kasi, ang right ng usufructuary is that meron kang right over the fruits. Pero ang problema kung nagkaroon ka ng improvement sa property at nag-end yung usufruct, pwede bang i-remove lahat ng improvement provided it will not cause damage to the property. Pero kung madadamage yung property pag ni-remove yung improvement, then okay, ang mag-apply is accessory follows the principal. Okay, Article 1190. Ito naman is obligation subject to resolutory condition. or subject na tinatawag na condition subsequent. Sabi dyan, when the condition have for their purpose the extinguishment of an obligation to give, the parties upon fulfillment of said condition shall return to each other what they have received. Kaya ibig sabihin, pag obligation subject to resolutory condition at na-fulfill yung condition, meron siyang magkakaroon siya ng retroactive. Okay? Ibig sabihin, magbabalikan daw kayo ng object dito. Okay, example Okay, I will give you 50,000 pesos per month until you pass the board exam. Ang problema, pag bigay ko ng tatlong 50,000, you pass the board exam. Okay? Ang question, required ka bang i-return yung 150,000? Okay, the answer is no, kung binigay ko yung 50,000 as a support kasi iba yung intention ng party. Pero let us modify. Okay, ang obligation, ang agreement ng debtor-creditor is this. I will lend to you my house and lot, okay, immediately. Okay, however, if my relative from abroad return back here in the Philippines, you are required to return the object immediately. Kaya lumalabas today, you can now demand for the delivery of the house and lot, pero once the condition is fulfilled, wherein my relative from abroad return back here in the Philippines, then you need to immediately return the object. Okay? Now, ito naman ang sabi diyan, in case of loss, deterioration, or improvement of thing, the provision which with respect to the debtor are laid down in the preceding article shall be applied to the party who is bound to return. I-apply mo lang daw yung Article 1189 kung sino yung merong duty. Yung may duty to return, he becomes the debtor. Now, katulad ng example. Okay, I will lend to you my house and lot immediately. Okay, provided that if my relative from abroad return back here in the Philippines, you are required to return it immediately. Kaya lumalabas, you may now compel me to deliver to you the house and lot. Okay, pero once yung condition na fulfilled, ang effect, obligation ng debtor, extinguish. Kaya you are bound to return the object. Eh, ang problema, what if the house deteriorate? Ang question, sinong magsasuffer ng deterioration? Okay, answer, ako ang magsasuffer ng deterioration. Kasi since ikaw yung may duty to return, you becomes the debtor. Eh, di ba ang sabi ng batas, if the object deteriorate without fault ng debtor, okay, the creditor shall suffer the deterioration. Yung nagpahiram, siyang magiging creditor dito. At yung nanghiram, siya yung naging debtor. Kaya magsasuffer ng deterioration, yung nagpahiram. Now, as for the obligations to do and not to do, the provision of the second paragraph of Article 1187 shall be observed as regards the effect of extinguishment of the obligation. Okay, now let us proceed now dun sa Article 11, 91. Sabi dyan, the power to rescind obligations is implied in reciprocal ones. In case one of the obligors should not comply with what is incumbent upon him. Okay, the injured party may choose between the fulfillment and rescission of the obligation with payment of damages in either case. He may also seek rescission even after he has chosen fulfillment if the latter should become impossible. Okay, katulad dyan sa contract of sale. Okay, sa contract of sale, when the vendor delivered the object, the buyer should pay the price. If the vendor delivered the object and the buyer failed to pay the price, then pwede kang mag-ask ng rescission. Because the power to rescind is implied in reciprocal one if one of the party does not comply what is incumbent upon him. Pero ang remedy dito, class, ng vendor, okay, is alternative. Okay, hindi siya cumulative. Pwede kang mamili raw between fulfillment, okay, or rescission ng obligation with damages in either case. Kaya pwedeng mag-demand rito ang vendor ng payment ng price or pwede niyang i-rescind. Kasi nga, the power to rescind is implied in reciprocal obligation. Pero pag pinili mo yung fulfillment, walang rescission. Or if you choose rescission, walang fulfillment. Kasi nga, alternative remedy. Pag sinabing alternative remedy, mamili ka lang. Pwedeng fulfillment or pwedeng rescission. Pero pag cumulative, it means sabay mong pwedeng i-exercise. May fulfillment na, may rescission pa. Eh hindi naman siya cumulative remedy. This is alternative remedy. Meaning, if you choose one alternative course of action, abandon yung other alternative course of action mo. Pero may exception. Sabi ng batas, if you choose fulfillment daw, but later on it becomes impossible, then pwede ka pa rin mag-ask ng rescission. Kasi di ba dapat general rule, kung nag-ask ka ng fulfillment, wala nang rescission. Pero sabi dito, if you choose fulfillment, pero subsequently it becomes impossible, you can still ask for rescission. Sabi diyan, the court shall decree the rescission claim unless there be a just cause authorizing the fixing of a period. This is understood to be without prejudice to the right of third person when acquired the thing in accordance with Article 1385 and 1388 and the mortgage law. Okay, itong Article 1192, hindi masyadong pinapansin tong article na to. Ito yung instance na yung both parties ay nag-commit ng breach. Okay, nag-breach ako, nag-breach ka din. Kaya sabi ng batas, in that case, yung liability raw ng first infractor shall be equitably tempered by the court. Pero kung hindi raw ma-determine kung sino yung first infractor, in that case, as is. Walang remedy ang both parties under the law. In that case, both party shall suffer their own respective damages. Okay, now punta tayo doon sa third primary classification ng obligation. Ito yung tinatawag na obligation with a period. Sabi dyan, obligations for whose fulfillment a day certain has been fixed shall be demandable only when the day comes. Ito, I'm referring to suspension period. Yung second paragraph naman, obligation with resolutory period take effect at once but terminate upon arrival of the day certain. Ito naman yung resolutory period. Now, tandaan nyo pag suspensive period, yung obligation, okay, is already existing. Pero magiging demandable lang siya upon arrival of the day certain. Pero pag suspensive condition, wala pang existing obligation because the obligation would arise only upon happening of the uncertain event. Sabi mo, sir, pagdating sa suspensive period, may existing obligation na? Oo. Meron ng existing obligation pag suspensive period. Yun nga lang, magiging demandable lang siya upon arrival of the day certain. Kasi nga, di ba pag period, certain to happen siya, although it may not known when. Okay. Ibig sabihin, siguradong darating, ang hindi mo lang alam ay kung kailan. Pero pag suspensive condition kasi, okay, wala pa talagang existing obligation. Kasi yung pag-arise ng obligation, nakadepende siya sa fulfillment ng condition. Eh kaso merong uncertainty nga whether the day will come or not. Ngayon sa resolutory period, sabi ko nga, yung obligation existing and immediately demandable na. Kasi yung arrival ng day certain is just a mode of extinguishment. Yung pangatlong paragraph, sabi dyan, a day certain is understood to be okay that which must necessarily come, although it may not be known when. Ibig sabihin, siguradong darating, pero hindi natin alam kung kailan. Kasi ang sabi ng paragraph number 4, pag meron ng uncertainty whether the day will come or not, then it becomes conditional obligation and therefore subject na yan okay doon sa rules ng preceding section. Magiging conditional obligation siya. Okay, now, marunong ba tayong magbilang? Okay, counting of period. Okay, tingnan natin yung case ng Mitsubishi Motors Philippines Corporation versus Chrysler Philippine Labor Union et al. In-interpret ng Supreme Court dito, okay, yung pag-count ng period. Okay? Now, under the labor code, okay, the probationary period is 6 months. Meaning if the employer allowed the probationary employee to work beyond 6 months, then the probationary employee becomes a regular employee. At once regular employee yan, hindi mo siya pwedeng i-terminate pag walang just and lawful cause. Pero kung probationary employee, pwede mo siyang tanggalin, okay, kung hindi niya na-meet yung minimum standard set forth by the employer. Tulad nito, si Nelson Paras was hired, okay, and start to report work, okay, on May 27, 1996 as a probationary employee. Ang problema, on November 26, 1996, okay, he was terminated. Okay? Ang date ng letter of termination is November 25, pero hindi naman yan ang reckoning period. Ang reckoning period, yung receipt ng employee. Okay? Ngayon, ang sabi ni Nelson Paras, at the time of termination, he is already a regular employee. But according to the employer, hindi raw siya regular employee. He's still a probationary employee at the time of termination. Kumbaga parang ang counting ng employer dito, nag-start siya ng, di ba, start May 27, di May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Dapat, okay, November 28 pa siya magiging regular. 6 months. Dapat hindi eksakto, dapat inallowed ka na mag-work beyond 6 months. Kasi 6 months is the probationary period. But according to Nelson Paras, he was a regular employee at the time of termination. O ngayon, sinong tama sa kanila? Umabot sa Supreme Court to. Okay, pag-count ng period. Ngayon, ang in-apply ng Supreme Court yung Article 13 ng Civil Code. Sabi ng Article 13 ng Civil Code, when the law is speak of years, months, days, or night, it shall be understood that the years are 365 days, each month of 30 days, days of 24 hours, and a night from sunset to sunrise. Okay, yung last paragraph sabi niyan, in computing a period, the first day shall be excluded and the last day included. Ang problema, ang binanggit ng batas sa labor code is 6 months probationary period. Since months ang ginamit, pursuant to Article 13, a month is composed of 30 days. Kaya 6 times 30, that is 180 days. Okay, tingnan natin yung pag-count. Nelson Paras was hired on May 27. Ang May 31 days. Minus 27, that is 4 days. Sa June, 30 days. July, 31 days. August, 31 days. September, 30 days. October, 31 days. Kaya pag inad mo siya, ang total is 157 days na. Kaya pagdating ng November, I need only 23 days to complete the 180 days probationary period. Kaya ang last day ng probationary employment nitong si Nelson Paras is on November 23. Now, since Nelson Paras was allowed to work on 24, Nelson Paras become a regular employee on November 24. Now, since he was terminated on November 26, okay, regular employee na siya nung November 24 pa lang. Kaya nung November 26, when he was terminated, he's already a regular employee. Kaya lumalabas, illegal dismissal yan. He cannot be removed kung walang just and lawful cause or authorized cause. Okay, now punta naman tayo sa another case. Itong case ni Commissioner of Internal Revenue versus IG Forging Company of Asia. Ang problema, sa labor code ang ginamit is 6 months. Pero mapapansin mo sa tax code, walang ginagamit na months normally doon, di ba? Puros year. And pursuant to Article 13 ng Civil Code, a year is composed of 365 days. Ngayon, pwede bang i-apply yan dito? Tingnan natin tong case ng CIR versus Aichi Forging Company of Asia. Okay. By the way, ang issue dito is regarding sa VAT, value added tax. I-summarize ko na lang ha. Bali, itong taxpayer kasi, okay, is a VAT registered taxpayer, pero meron kasi siyang zero rated sale. Alam natin na pag zero rated sale ka, ang output tax may zero, pero meron kang input tax, kaya meron kang tinatawag na creditable input tax. Kaya pwede ka mag-recover, okay, or makakuha ng tinatawag na refund. Ngayon, ang taxable quarter in issue is from July 1, 2002 hanggang September 30, 2002. Ngayon, nag-file to ng quarterly VAT return, okay, ng October 20, 2002. Tapos, nag-file ang taxpayer ng refund noong September 30, 2004. Ang naging unang issue, saan ba mag-i-start ang, okay, 2 years reglementary period ng refund? Okay, mag-start ba yan ng September 30, 2002, yung end ng taxable quarter? Or mag-start siya from the filing of the quarterly return? Okay, ang sabi ng Court of Tax Appeal by Division, dapat mag-start ang counting ng 2 years, okay, ng September 30, 2002, pursuant to Section 112 of the National Internal Revenue Code. However, pag-akyat ng Court of Tax Appeal and Bank, okay, ginawa, okay, dapat mag-start daw ng October 20, 2002, pursuant to Section 204 naman ng National Internal Revenue Code. Ngayon, sino ba ang tama? Kailan ba talaga siya mag-start? Section 112? Dapat dito? Or Section 204 simulang October 20? Okay, now tingnan mo natin yung nakalagay na provision sa batas. Section 112. Refund or tax credit of input tax. Zero-rated or effectively zero-rated sale. Any VAT registered person whose sales are zero-rated or effectively zero-rated may within 2 years after the close of taxable quarter. Kaya ibig sabihin after close ng taxable quarter pursuant to Section 112, that is September 30, 2002. Pero iba naman ang sinasabi ng Section 204. Authority of the Commissioner to compromise, abate, and refund or credit taxes. Sabi niyan, the Commissioner may, paragraph C, credit or refund taxes erroneously or legally received or penalties imposed without authority. Refund the value of internal revenue stamp when they are returned in good condition by the purchaser and its discretion, redeem or change unused stamp that have been rendered unfit for use and refund their value upon proof of destruction. No credit or refund of taxes or penalties shall be allowed unless the taxpayer files in writing with the Commissioner a claim for credit or refund within 2 years after payment of tax or penalty. Di dapat dito daw. Di ba ang rule natin is pay as you file? Since nag-file ng return dito ng October 20, dito daw pursuant to Section 204. Ngayon, sino ang tama sa kanilang dalawa? Pag-akyat ng Supreme Court, ni-reverse ang desisyon ng CTA and Bank. Bumalik dito. Dapat ang tama daw, sabi ng Supreme Court Section 112. Okay? Why? Bakit hindi 204? Kasi yung 204, nag-a-apply siya pagdating sa tax erroneously paid or tax illegally collected. Kaya pag halimbawa may overpayment ka, o kaya naman erroneous okay yung payment mo, then dapat upon filing of return. Pero ang problema, nagre-recovered ng refund ang taxpayer based on zero-rated sale. Kaya dapat mag-apply Section 112. Kasi yung Section 112 is specifically nag-apply ito sa refund ng tax credit of input tax. Kaya settled tayo na dapat mag-start ng September 30, 2002. Ngayon, ang question pang dito, nakapag-file ba ang taxpayer within the reglementary period of 2 years? Ang sabi ng Commissioner of Internal Revenue, okay, no, kasi dapat ang last day of filing daw should be on September 29, 2004. Bakit September 29, 2004? Kasi in-apply nila yung Article 30 ng Civil Code. When the law is speak of years, it consists of 365 days. Kaya kung 2 years, 2 times 365, okay? Eh ang problema, 2004 is a leap year. Ibig sabihin, meron siyang February 29 and therefore it consists of 366 days. Kaya pag in-apply mo yung civil code, uurong ka ng 1 day. Kaya dapat ang last day of filing daw should be September 29. But according to the taxpayer, hindi raw yan mag-a-apply. Kasi meron din daw definition ng 1 year under the Administrative Code of 1987. At ang sinasabi ng Administrative Code of 1987, pag sinabing 1 year daw, means consists of, okay, 12 calendar months. Okay, irrespective of number of days. Sa madaling salita, may conflict sa definition ng 1 year sa Article 13 at 1 year sa Administrative Code of 1987. Kasi ang 1 year sa Article 13 ay 365 days. Ang 1 year naman sa 1987 Administrative Code okay, ay 12 calendar month, respective of number of days. Now, anong mag-a-apply dito? Sabi ng Supreme Court, ang dapat mag-apply ay Administrative Code of 1987 pursuant to the doctrine of lex posteriori derogat priori. Pag sinabing lex posteriori derogat priori, kung anong mas bagong batas, siya yung mag-a-apply. Since merong conflict sa definition ng 1 year, okay, sa Article 30 ng Civil Code, na consists of 365 days, at 1 year sa Administrative Code of 1987, which consists of 12 calendar month, mag-a-apply ang Administrative Code of 1987. Kaya, wag niyong pakialaman yung leap year, kasi year ang binanggit sa batas. Okay? Kaya dapat, okay, nakapag-file yan within the okay, reglementary period of 2 years. Pero by the way, natalo pa rin ang taxpayer dito. Kasi ang ginawa ng taxpayer, umakyat kagad sila ng Court of Tax Appeal, hindi sila dumaan sa Commissioner of Internal Revenue. At ang sabi ng Supreme Court dito, okay, lack of jurisdiction ang CTA sapagat wala silang i-review. Sapagat ang Court of Tax Appeal is not a court of original jurisdiction. This is a court of appellate jurisdiction. At ang nire-review nila ay yung desisyon ng Commissioner of Internal Revenue. Okay, now since umakyat kaagad sila, there is nothing to review. Kasi hindi sila dumaan okay, sa Commissioner of Internal Revenue. Ngayon po na tayo sa kind of obligation with a period. Okay, as to effect, pwede raw siyang suspensive, okay, or pwede siyang resolutory. Pag suspensive, or sometimes we call it an XDA, okay, ang sabi ng batas dito, okay, yung obligation ay existing and demandable. Okay, existing, okay, pero magiging, okay, demandable lang siya upon arrival of the day certain. Ulitin ko, pag suspensive period, existing na. Kasi nga, di ba, pag period, certain to happen siya, although it may not known when. Pero magiging demandable lang siya upon arrival ng period. Pero pag resolutory or indie, yung obligation ay existing at immediately demandable na. Kasi yung arrival ng day certain is just a mode of extinguishment. Pero question, what if my obligation to you is due next month? But the debtor pay today. But the payment is under mistake. Can the debtor recover the payment? The answer is yes. You can recover the payment together with interest, pursuant to Article 1195 of the Civil Code. Ngayon, kung yan ay subject to suspensive period at yung object ay may nangyari, pwedeng na-loss, na-deteriorate, or nag-improve, i-apply nyo lang yung Article 1189 ng Civil Code doon sa conditional obligation. As the source, pwede siyang legal. Ito yung period provided by law. Conventional, these are the period created by agreement. And judicial, these are the period fixed by the court. As to definiteness, pwede siyang definite, fixed or known when it will come. Halimbawa, December 1, 2020 is definite. Pero pag indefinite, not fixed or not known when it will come. Like death. Because death is certain to happen, although it may not known when. Okay. Sabi ng Article 1196, whenever in an obligation, a period is designated, it is presumed to have been established for the benefit of both the creditor and the debtor, unless from the tenor of the same or other circumstances, it should appear that the period has been established in favor of one or of the other. Kaya ibig sabihin, pag meron daw period, ang presumption ng batas, the period was intended for the benefit of both the debtor and creditor. Kaya ang basic rule natin pag may period, the debtor cannot pay, the creditor cannot demand payment before arrival of the day certain. Kaya tandaan nyo ha, bawal magbayad, bawal maningil before arrival of the day certain. Illustration. The debtor is indebted to the creditor for 100,000 due October 1, 2020. Ang question, can the debtor pay today? Okay, pwede bang magbayad ang debtor today? The answer, of course, is no. Because the period is for the benefit of both debtor and creditor. Kasi sabi ko nga, bawal magbayad, bawal maningil before arrival of the day certain. Pero may question ako dito. Okay, hindi ba parang engot to? Nagbabayad na yung debtor today, ayaw pang tanggapin ng creditor. Okay, engot ba ang creditor? The answer is no. Why? Kasi kung yan ay with interest, may stop ang running ng interest. Eh, paano kung walang interest, sir? Engot ba yung creditor? Parang. Pero, hindi pa rin siya engot. Sapagkat, ang term payment, napaka-broad yan. Pursuant to Article 1232. Ano bang definition ng payment? Sabi doon, payment means not only the delivery of money, but also the performance in any manner of an obligation. Kaya kasama dito yung performance of obligation to give, to do, saka not to do. Okay, o example, para masabi natin hindi engot tong creditor. I am the debtor, you're the creditor. My obligation to you is to deliver a big elephant on October 1, 2020. O ang tanong, can the debtor deliver the elephant today? No, because the creditor may refuse to accept it. Why? Kasi nga, since may period, it is presumed it was intended for the benefit ng both debtor and creditor. Kasi paano mo i-compel yung creditor tanggapin yung elepante today? Eh kung wala pang kulungan yung creditor. Kaya nga pag may period, Ang presumption, that period was intended for the benefit ng both debtor and creditor. Lalo na sa obligation to do. Bawa, ang obligation ng debtor kay creditor, magpe-perform siya as clown on October 1, 2020. Pero yung debtor gusto na mag-perform today. Pwede ba siyang i-refuse ng creditor? The answer is yes. Pwede siyang i-refuse kasi nga may period. Kaya tandaan niyo ang basic rule, bawal magbayad, bawal maningil before arrival ng day certain. Pero may exception yan. Kasi ang sabi niya, di ba, unless from the tenor of the same or other circumstances, it should appear that the period has been established in favor of one or of the other. Illustration. Ito naman period intended for the benefit ng debtor only. The debtor is indebted to the creditor for 100,000. Ang due date niya is on or before October 1, 2020. Can the debtor pay today? Of course, the answer is yes. Because the period was intended for the benefit ng debtor. Kaya ibig sabihin yung debtor pwedeng magbayad na today, okay? Or pwedeng hanggang October 1. Pero yung creditor cannot demand payment before October 1, 2020. Kasi dito, okay, ang benefit ng period nasa debtor. Kaya yung debtor pwedeng magbayad, pero hindi pwedeng maningil ang creditor. Okay? Now, let us modify. Paano kung halimbawa yung period was intended for the benefit ng creditor only? Okay, example, the debtor is indebted to the creditor for 100,000. Ang due date niya on or before October 1, 2020. Okay? Sorry, mali, baguhin natin to. Dapat nakalagay doon, due date niya is October 1, okay, 2020. Tanggalin nyo to. Pero may nakalagay na provision na but the creditor may demand payment on or before October 1, 2020. Ang ibig sabihin lang yan, yung debtor hindi pwedeng magbayad, okay, before October 1. Pero yung creditor pwede siyang maningil before October 1. Kasi ang benefit ng period na kay creditor, wala sa debtor. Kaya yung malabas, can the debtor pay today? No, the period is for the benefit ng creditor only. Pero I repeat, the creditor can demand payment before arrival of the day certain. Now, can the court fix the period? Okay, general rule is no. Because the reason is that the court cannot make a contract for the parties. Kasi kung halimbawa, pure obligation siya. Okay, no condition, no period. Dapat immediately demandable. Can the court fix the period? No, because the period was not intended. Because if the court will fix the period and the period was not intended, that is an interference with freedom of contract. Violation yan. Tandaan nyo sa 1987 Constitution, no law shall be passed impairing the obligation of contract. Okay? Kaya lumalabas, meron tayong dalawang instances lang wherein the court is authorized to fix the period. Number 1, no period fixed but the period was intended. Ibig sabihin, merong intention yung contracting parties na mag-fix ng period. Hindi lang nila na-fix. That's why when the court fixed the period, the court is just following the intention of the party. At pangalawa, when the period is depend upon the sole will ng debtor. Kasi nga, if the period is depend upon the sole will ng debtor, okay, tulad niyan, when the debtor bind himself when his means permit him to do so. Okay, sabi ng debtor, I will pay little by little from time to time. It means the debtor is willing to pay. What is left to him is not the payment itself, but only the period of payment. That's why the court is authorized to fix the period. Sabi dito, the court shall determine such period as probably contemplated by the parties. Once fixed by the court, the period cannot change by them. Okay? Ibig sabihin, once pinix ng court, then the court cannot change it. Kasi pag pinix na siya ng court, okay, magiging part na yan ng contract between the parties. Kaya hindi na siya pwedeng baguhin pa ng korte. Otherwise, interference na naman siya ng freedom of contract. I repeat, general rule, whenever a period is designated, it is presumed for the benefit ng both creditor and debtor, except when expressly provide otherwise. Kaya ulitin ko, di ba, bawal magbayad, bawal maningil before arrival ng day certain. Pero under Article 1198, meron tayong 5 instances dito wherein the debtor lose the right to use the period. Kaya kahit may period siya, okay, mawawalan ng right yung debtor to use the period. That's why ang effect, the obligation becomes immediately demandable. That's why the creditor may demand for the immediate payment ng obligation. Okay, pero may question ako sa inyo. Halimbawa, may period siya. Di ba ang basic rule, bawal magbayad, bawal maningil before arrival ng day certain. Pero may exception nga sa Article 1198 na mawawala yung right ng debtor to use the period, kaya the creditor can demand for the immediate payment ng obligation. Ngayon ang question ko, meron ba kayong naaalala or may naiisip ba kayong provision under the law na meron siyang period pero pwedeng magbayad yung debtor and the creditor cannot refuse to accept payment? Okay, kasi kung sa part ng creditor na pwede siyang mag-demand, yan yung 1198. Pero ang question ko, sa part ng debtor na pwede siyang magbayad before arrival ng day certain and the creditor cannot refuse to accept payment. May period. O answer. Okay, dun sa Maceda Law. Okay, di ba under the Maceda Law, pagdating sa sale ng real property on installment basis, means residential property on installment basis, kahit na 30 years yan, pag ang debtor, okay, yung buyer ay meron ng available cash, pwede nang bayaran, okay, ng full, yung entire contract price. At hindi siya pwedeng i-refuse ng seller. Okay? O yan yung example natin na pwedeng magbayad before arrival ng day certain. Okay? Now, how about sa sale ng personal property on installment sa recto law? Baba. Okay? Mag-a-apply ba yan? Halimbawa, bumili ako for instance ng car for 5 years. After 2 years, nanalo ako sa loto, meron ako available cash, gusto kong bayaran yung entire balance. Pwede ba? The answer is no. Sapagat walang nakalagay na ganyan sa batas, pagdating sa personal property. Nag-a-apply lang yan in case of real property. In fact, dapat residential property lang. Kasi tandaan nyo, hindi nag-a-apply ang Maceda Law pagdating sa commercial building, industrial lot, saka sale to tenant under the Corp. Okay? Now, ano ba yung instances wherein the debtor lose the right to use the period? Number 1, when after the obligation has been contracted, he become insolvent daw unless he give a guaranteed security for the debt. Example, the debtor is indebted to the creditor for 1 million. Okay, ang term niya 3 years. Ang problema, after 2 months pa lang, the debtor become insolvent. Anong effect? The obligation becomes immediately demandable. Obvious naman yung reason eh. Kasi kung ihintayin pa ng creditor yung term or period dito, wala nang property yung debtor, pinag-agaw-agawan na ng kanya mga creditors. Kaya ang effect, the debtor lose the right to use the period. Kasi nga, the debtor become insolvent. Pero may exception siya. If the debtor gives a guaranteed security for the debt. Kasi halimbawa, yung debtor may obligation kay creditor na 1 million, ang term niya 3 years after, okay, ang problema, kunwari, okay, yung utang na 1 million, secured dito ng real estate mortgage. After 2 months, the debtor become insolvent. O in that case, the debtor can use the period. Kasi fully secured yung creditor. Kasi nagbigay siya ng guarantee or security for the debt. Pangalawa, when he does not furnish to the creditor the guarantees or security which he has promised. O may pang-trick dito. Kailangan nag-promise yung debtor. Kasi kung walang promise yung debtor, unsecured obligation lang yan. Pero kung halimbawa, yung debtor, nagbigay siya ng promise na mag-execute siya ng guarantee security, kaya binigyan siya ng period ng creditor. Okay? At hindi niya later on in-execute yung guarantee security, it means the debtor lose the right to use the period. Example. Okay, the debtor borrow from the creditor 1 million pesos. Ang term niya, 3 years. Okay, pero as a condition for the loan, okay, nag-promise for instance yung debtor na mag-execute siya ng real estate mortgage para i-secure yung loan. Ang problema, when the creditor now deliver to the debtor yung 1 million, the debtor now refuse to execute a guarantor security, okay, para i-secure yung loan na pre-promise niya. In that case, the debtor lose the right to use the period. Pero let us modify. Paano kung walang promise? Okay, halimbawa, the debtor borrow from the creditor 1 million. Pero never siyang nag-promise na mag-execute siya ng guarantor security. In that case, the creditor, okay, the debtor can use the period. Pero may exception. Uli. Kasi halimbawa, okay, after 3 months, the debtor become insolvent, bagsak siya ng number 1. Babagsak siya ng number 1 kasi naging insolvent siya. Pero kung hindi naman siya insolvent, then the debtor can use the period. Kasi dapat nga nagkaroon siya ng promise na mag-execute siya ng guarantee or security. Number 3, when by his own act, he has impaired said guarantees or security after their establishment, and when through a fortuitous event daw, they disappear unless he immediately gives new ones equally satisfactory. Okay, example, okay, the debtor borrow from the creditor 1 million. To secure the loan, okay, the debtor execute a chattel mortgage on his car. Di ba sa chattel mortgage, okay, yung debtor pa rin ang may possession ng security. I-record lang yan sa chattel mortgage registry. Okay, ang problema after 2 months, okay, yung debtor, pinark niya yung car na naka-chattel mortgage sa SM, okay, car park. Tapos later on, biglang nagkaroon kunwari ng earthquake. Okay, yung entire car park, okay, gumuho. Kasama dun yung car na naka-chattel mortgage. Anong effect? Okay, is the obligation ng debtor extinguish? No. Kasi hindi naman na-loss dito yung principal object. Ang na-loss lang dito, yung guarantee or security lang. Kaya ang effect lang niyan is that the debtor lose the right to use the period. Pero may exception ha. Okay, unless okay, the debtor execute another guarantee or security which are equally satisfactory. Kasi baka mamaya na-loss nga yung car na naka-chattel mortgage, pero yung debtor nag-execute ulit siya ng another chattel mortgage na equally satisfactory. In that case, the debtor can still use the period. Number 4, when the debtor violates daw any undertaking in consideration of which the creditor agreed to the period. And last, when the debtor attempts to abscond. Okay, attempts lang ha, tingnan. Okay, may attempt to abscond. The debtor will lose the right to use the period. Kaya ang effect niyan, the obligation now becomes immediately demandable. Okay? Wait lang for mga 2 minutes lang. Wait lang. Okay? Now, let us proceed now sa another kind of obligation. Ito yung alternative saka facultative. Okay, now, pag sinabi nating okay, simple, only one prestation daw is due. Okay, example, the debtor bind himself to deliver to the creditor a specific car. Simple siya. Kasi isa lang yung object, yung car. Pero pag compound, pwede raw siyang conjunctive or distributive. Pag conjunctive, there are several prestation and all of which are due. Example, my obligation to is to deliver a car and a truck. Okay? Dalawang dapat i-deliver ko, yung car and truck. Pero pag distributive, okay, 2 or more prestation is due, pwede raw siyang alternative or pwede siyang facultative. Pag alternative, meron siyang several prestation na due, but the performance of one is sufficient. Example, my obligation to you is to deliver a car or a truck. Pero pag sinabing facultative, there is only one object na due, but the debtor may substitute. Example, my obligation is to deliver a car. Okay, isa lang yung object, yung car. But I can substitute it with a truck. Okay, general rule. Under Article 1200 ng Civil Code, in alternative obligation, the right of choice belongs to the debtor unless expressly granted to the creditor. Kaya ang merong right of choice, debtor daw. Pero pwede siyang ibigay sa creditor. Pero take note, merong limitation ang right of choice. Because the debtor cannot choose those objects which is unlawful, impossible, or which cannot be the object of an obligation. And take note that the debtor lose the right of choice when among the prestation daw he is alternatively bound, only one is practicable. Kaya itong tatlong ito, possible, unlawful, not the object of obligation, limitation lang ng right of choice. Pero itong pang-apat dito, talagang yung debtor wala ng right of choice. Kasi nga, among those object na he is alternatively bound, only one is practicable. Ang effect niyan, yung kaninang alternative obligation, magiging simple obligation. Illustration. The debtor is indebted to the creditor to deliver a car or a truck or a racehorse or shabu or soil from Pluto or an ordinary horse. Sabi natin sa Article 1200, the right of choice belongs to the debtor unless expressly granted to the creditor. Kaya pag silent yung problem, ang right of choice nasa debtor. Pero pwede ko ibigay sa creditor. Okay? Pero pag walang naka-indicate sa problem, ang right of choice nasa debtor. Pero hindi raw pwedeng piliin ng debtor yung object na unlawful, impossible, or which cannot be the object of an obligation. Bakit hindi pwedeng ordinary horse? Kasi matataas yung value nito. Okay? Hindi mo pwedeng i-deliver to. Kaya mamimili lang siya among okay, car, truck, and racehorse. Pero kung nawala yung truck, saka yung racehorse, okay, magiging simple lang siya. Okay, magiging simple obligation. Kaya lumalabas, the debtor now lose the right of choice because when among the okay object that is alternatively bound, only one is practicable. Okay? Ano ba to? Wait lang ha. Ito, laser pointer. Kaya lumalabas, ito na lang i-deliver mo, car. Now, okay? Punta tayo sa another question. Halimbawa, may tatlong object. Ang right of choice nasa debtor. Ang racehorse na lost through the fault ng debtor. Okay, is the debtor liable for damages? The answer is no. Because the debtor can still choose among alternative object. Pwede pa niyang i-deliver yung car or yung truck. Pag ang truck ay na-lost through the fault ng debtor, is the debtor liable for damages? The answer is no pa rin. Kasi pwede pa rin niyang i-deliver yung car. Pero dito, mako-convert na from alternative into simple. Okay? Pag ang car ay na-lost by fortuitous event, extinguish. Pag ang car ay na-lost through the fault ng debtor, the debtor is liable for the value of the car. Lumalabas yung last object. Kaya may manonotice ninyo, pag ang right of choice nasa debtor, ang titingnan mo lang last object. Pag ang last object ay na-lost by fortuitous event, extinguish. Pag ang last object na lost through the fault ng debtor, the debtor is liable for the value of the last object. On the other hand, if the right of choice belongs to the creditor, binigay ko naman sa creditor, iba na ang rule natin. Any object that was lost through the fault ng debtor. Bawa, ang right of choice na kay creditor. Na-loss ito through the fault ng debtor. Anong remedy ng creditor? Number 1, he can demand for the delivery ng car or delivery ng truck or the value of the racehorse plus damages. Kasi ang reason dito is that the creditor may opt to choose the racehorse. Ngayon, kung na-loss yung racehorse, na-loss din yung truck through the fault ng debtor, anong remedy ng creditor? Okay, he can demand for the delivery ng car or the value of the truck or the value of the racehorse plus damages in our case. Kung lahat ng object ay na-loss to the fault ng debtor, okay, the creditor can demand for the value of the racehorse, value of the truck, or value of the car plus damages in either case pa rin. Kasi ang reason nga dito, since ang right of choice nasa creditor, the creditor may opt to choose the object that was lost through the fault ng debtor. By the way, sabi nga pala ng Article 1201, okay, the choice shall produce no effect except from the time it has been communicated. Ibig sabihin, pag ang right of choice nasa debtor, it remains to be alternative. Pero the moment the debtor communicate to the creditor that he is now choosing the racehorse, mako-convert yung alternative into a simple obligation. Kaya racehorse na lang. Pag ang racehorse ay na-loss by fortuitous event, extinguish. Pag ang racehorse ay na-loss through the fault ng debtor, the debtor is liable for the value of the racehorse. On the other hand, pag ang right of choice nasa creditor, okay, nasa creditor ang right of choice, okay, lumalabas alternative siya. Pero the moment the creditor communicate to the debtor that is now choosing the racehorse, mako-convert yan into a simple obligation. Kaya titingin ka na lang sa racehorse. Pag ang racehorse ay na-loss by fortuitous event, extinguish. Pag ang racehorse ay na-loss through the fault ng debtor, the debtor is liable for the value of the racehorse. Okay? Sabi naman ng 1203, if through the creditor's act daw, the debtor cannot make a choice according to the terms of the obligation. Okay, the latter daw may rescind the contract with damages. Okay, halimbawa, sinasabi lang ng 1203 pag ang through the fault daw ng creditor, hindi makapamili yung debtor among the alternative object, pwede raw siyang mag-file ng action for rescission plus damages. Halimbawa, through the fault ng creditor, naku, napatay niya yung racehorse. Ibig sabihin na may kasalanan dito yung creditor, na loss yung racehorse. Dito rin makapamili yung debtor. Okay, pwede raw siyang mag-file ng rescission plus damages. Okay, by the way, i-summarize natin na. Ito ang rule sa 1204, yung right belongs to the debtor. Ito naman 1205, ang right of choice belongs to the creditor. Mapapansin mo, sa dami ng sinasabi ng 1204 sa 1205, simple lang ang rule. Pag ang right of choice belongs to the debtor, I repeat, tumingin ka lang sa last object. Pag ang last object ay na-loss by fortuitous event, extinguish. Pag ang last object ay na-loss to the fault ng debtor, the debtor is liable for the value of the last object. Pero pag ang right of choice belongs to the creditor, ibang rule sa 1205. Ang rule is any object that was lost through the fault ng debtor. Kaya ibig sabihin, kahit alin dyan ang mawala through the fault ng debtor, liable ka for damages. Kasi ang reason dito, the creditor may opt to choose the object that was lost through the fault ng debtor. O, yan yung rule natin ha. Debtor choice, last item loss. Pag creditor's choice, any item lost through the fault ng debtor. Okay, punta naman tayo sa facultative. Pag facultative obligation, there is only one object daw na due. But the debtor may substitute. Okay, ang titingnan nyo lang dito sa facultative. Okay? Before and after substitution. Kasi pag before substitution, tumingin ka lang sa car. Pag ang car ay na-loss by fortuitous event, extinguish. Pag ang car ay na-loss through the fault ng debtor, the debtor is liable for damages. Yung truck, irrelevant yan before substitution kasi hindi siya yung object or prestation. Pero after substitution, then the truck becomes the principal object. Kaya titingin ka na lang sa truck, okay, after substitution. Pag ang truck ay na-lost by 437, extinguish. Pag ang truck ay na-lost through the fault ng debtor, the debtor is liable for damages. Yung car, after substitution, irrelevant na sapagat hindi na siya yung object or prestation. Kaya tingnan nyo lang sa problem kung before substitution or after substitution. Okay, ito yung rule. Okay, before substitution, loss of object without fault ng debtor, not liable. Loss of object with fault of the debtor, liable siya. Loss deterioration of the substitute with or without fault ng debtor, not liable kasi ang reason, yung substitute hindi pa siya object or prestation. Pero after substitution, okay, loss ng object with or without fault ng, okay, without fault, not liable. Ito yung principal object dati kasi hindi na siya yung object or prestation ngayon. Loss of substitute, okay, with fault, liable. Loss of substitute without fault, of course, not liable. Okay? Punta naman tayo sa joint and solidary obligation. Okay? Pag isang debtor, isang creditor, we called it individual obligation. Pero the moment na may 2 or more debtors na or 2 or more creditors, then we called it compound, collective. Okay, pwede siyang okay, joint or solidary. Ngayon, pag sinabing joint, it means the debt will be divided as many debtors and the credit will be divided as many creditors. Kumbaga, yung debt saka credit are considered okay, separate from one another. Pero pag solidary, the debt of one is the debt of all, the credit of one is the credit of all for all for one. In fact, if you read Article 1207 ng Civil Code, di ba ang sabi doon, the concurrence of 2 or more debtors or 2 or more creditors in one or same obligation does not imply that each of the former are liable to pay the entire obligation, neither the latter can collect the entire obligation, because there is solidarity only when so provided for by law, stipulation, or nature ng obligation requires solidarity. Yan, general rule natin, joint. Kasi nagkakaroon lang ng solidary obligation pag may law, second stipulation, o kaya yung nature ng obligation requires solidarity. Okay? Ngayon, by the way, yung examiner kasi gumagamit minsan ng mga other terminologies. Kaya paki-check yung maigi. Okay, pag ang nakalagay na term kunwari is okay, joint, pro rata, proportionately, mancomunada simple, mancomunadamente. Okay, o kaya sa promissory note, naglagay ng we promise to pay signed by 2 or more person, okay, joint obligation siya. Pero pag ang ginamit na term kunwari ay, okay, solidaria, okay, in solidum, juntos o separadamente, individually and or collectively, joint and or severally, I promise to pay signed by 2 or more person. Okay, in that case, the obligation is solidary. Solidary obligation siya. Pero kung hindi mo ma-identify kung joint or solidary, ang general rule is that joint obligation lang siya. Kasi I repeat, nagkakaroon lang ng solidary obligation pag may law, second stipulation, or nature ng obligation requires solidarity. Okay, by the way, di ba may una kalagay diyang unang exception is law? Kaya dapat familiar kayo ano yung mga provision sa law na nag-i-impose ng solidary obligation. Kasi hindi yan sasabihin sa problem. Bahala kayong mag-identify whether or not, okay, solidary yan or joint. Okay? Kaya kailangan alam niyo yung mga provision sa batas na nag-impose ng solidary obligation. Tulad ng Article 927. Okay? Article 1712 saka 1723. Okay, ito mga okay, unrelated actually sa topic sa syllabus. Pero pakitandaan nyo na lang. Tulad ng Article 927, two or more heirs take possession of estate, loss, or destruction of a thing, device, or bequest, even though only one of them should have been negligent. Article 1712, death or injury is due to the negligence of fellow worker. The latter and the employer shall be solidarily liable for compensation. Article 1723, the collapse of building or structure within 15 years from the completion of the structure, the engineer or architect who supervised the construction shall be solidarily liable with the contractor. Okay, another, ito related na to sa topic natin. Article 1823 saka 1824 sa Law on Partnership. Ang general rule sa Law on Partnership, ang liability ng partner ay pro rata pero subsidiary. Ano ibig sabihin ng pro rata? Yung term pro rata dyan, same as joint obligation yan. Okay? Pero pag sinabing subsidiary, ibig sabihin yung partnership creditor, hindi niya pwedeng habulin directly yung individual partners. Kailangan niyong ubusin muna lahat ng asset ng partnership pag na-fully exhaust na, then to make all partners liable pro rata. Pero meron tayong instances sa law on partnership na nag-impose ng solidarity obligation sa mga partners together with the partnership. Ito na nga yun. Yan yun. 1822, okay, and 1824. Bali, any wrongful or omission of any partner acting in the ordinary course of business of the partnership or with the authority of co-partners, loss or injury daw is caused to any partner. Yung wrongful or omission dito, kaya yan yung source ng obligation ay delict or quasi-delict. Kasi halimbawa, yung partner, halimbawa si A is a managing partner while driving a car to meet the client of the partnership, he accidentally hit X, a third person. Si X, pwede niyang habulin dito yung buong partnership. Okay, yung partnership mismo, pwedeng si partner A, partner B, or partner C. Or pwedeng all of them simultaneously because the liability is solidary. Another is when a partner daw receive money or property from a third person and he misapply it. Okay, dalawang part to ha. Okay, dito ang naka-receive yung partner. Okay? Dito naman ang naka-receive partnership. Sabihin kung yung partnership, unahin natin to, yung partnership kunwari naka-receive ng money or property from a third person, any of the partner misappropriate or misapply it. Dito naman, when a partner acting within the scope of his authority, okay, with a parent authority daw, naka-receive siya ng money or property from a third person and he misappropriate or misapply it. Tapos ito naman sa law on agency, okay, ang problema yung agency kasi tinanggal na yan sa syllabus ng board exam. Kaya possible na hindi na ito itanong. Pero by the way, ang sinasabi lang ng Article 1911, even though yung okay, agent daw, nag-exceed ng authority, okay, the principal and the agent are solidarily liable if the principal allowed the agent to act as though he had full power. Another is Article 915 sa law on agency pa rin to. Okay, dalawang principal nag-appoint ng common agent, ang liability ng two or more principal solidary. Okay, alam mo, P1 saka si P2, in-appoint nila si agent 1. Liability ni P1, P2, solidary. Pero take note, pag si principal nag-appoint ng agent 1 and agent 2, yung liability ng 2 or more agent dito, ang rule is joint obligation lang. Unless may agreement ng solidary obligation. Another sa contract of comodatum, liability ng 2 or more bailees daw in comodatum to whom a thing is loaned in the same contract. Ay bawa, pinahiram ko yung libro kay A saka kay B. Lumalabas si A and B are bailees in comodatum. 2 or more bailees in comodatum. Yung duty nila to return to me, solidary yan. Another is a negotiorum gestio under Article 2146. The responsibility of 2 or more officious managers sa negotiorum gestio shall be solidary unless the management was assumed to save the thing or business from imminent danger. Article 2184, sabi dyan, the owner and his driver in a motor vehicle mishap, if the former was in the vehicle, could have by the use of due diligence prevented the misfortune. Another is responsibility of 2 or more persons who are liable for quasi-delict. Kaya mapapansin nyo pag ang source ng obligation is quasi-delic, solidary obligation. Now, ito naman yung mga solidarity under special laws. Ibig sabihin, outside of the civil code to. Tulad ng Article 94 and 121 ng Executive Order 209 sa Family Code, 218 and 219 ng Family Code. Ito hindi to tatanong kasi unrelated yan sa topic. Nilagay ko lang yan para makita nyo na may solidary obligation dito. Ito, possible question to. Liability ng Director for Water Stock pursuant to Section 64 ng Republic Act 11232 or the Revised Corporation Code. Okay? Before, nasa Section 65 to ng BP 68. Ano ba yung water stock? Shares is said to be watered kung par value shares in-issued nyo less than par, o kaya naman kung no par value shares in-issued nyo for insufficient consideration or in-overvalued nyo yung non-cash consideration received. Ngayon, sino bang liable for the issuance ng water stock? Lahat daw ng director na nag-authorize. Okay? Sino pa? Yung director na may knowledge thereof daw, okay, pero okay, hindi siya nag-file ng opposition in writing before the corporate secretary, lahat sila ay solidary liable dito. Another yung violation ng threefold duty ng director trustee pursuant to section 30, okay, ng RA 11232. Okay, when the director trustee daw who willfully and knowingly vote for assent to the patent unlawful act ng corporation, ito yung duty of obedience. Okay, were guilty of gross negligence or bad faith in directing the affairs of the corporation, duty of diligence, and last, duty of efficient. Okay, duty of okay, all yung ano natin, obedience, loyalty. Ito yung duty of loyalty. Kaya threefold duty ng director trustee is obedience, okay, diligence, saka loyalty. At ang liability imposed by law, solidary. Another is liability ng two or more employer para i-compensate yung employee under the Workmen Compensation Act, okay, under Act number 3428. Ito naman is Section 17, Paragraph G ng Negotiable Instrument Law. Ang sinasabi, when an instrument contain the word, I promise to pay, signed by two or more person, they are deemed to be jointly and severally liable thereon. Jointly and severally, hindi yan joint obligation, that is a solidary obligation. Okay, joint payees or joint endorsees who endorse are deemed to endorse jointly and severally. Okay, pursuant to Section 68 ng Negotiable Instrument Law. Ito naman, may dinagdag ako related sa topic natin under the Cooperative Law, Philippine Cooperative of 2008. Sinasabi dito, all tax-free importation thou shall not be sold, nor the beneficial ownership thereof be transferred to any person until after 5 years. Kasi halimbawa, nagkaroon ng tax-free importation yung cooperative. Tax-free. Bawal nilang ibenta to or i-transfer within a period of 5 years. Otherwise, okay, they are solidary liable daw. Okay, together with the acquirer, okay, twice the amount of imposed tax and or duties daw. Kaya yan, solidary obligation din to. Okay? Now, punta tayo sa kind of solidarity as two parties bound. May tinatawag tayong passive solidarity. Di ba pag sinabing passive subject, okay, it means sa part ng debtor. Okay, pag sinabing active solidarity naman, it means sa part ng creditor. Pag mix, edi okay, solidarity sa part ng both debtor and creditor. As to source, pwede raw siyang conventional. Okay, ibig sabihin by agreement to, created by agreement. Legal solidarity are solidarity imposed by law. Pag real solidarity, these are solidarity from the nature ng obligation. Tandaan nyo, sabi natin kanina, there is solidarity only when so provided for by law. Ito yun. Stipulation or nature ng obligation requires solidarity. As to legal tie, pwede raw siyang uniform, okay, or pwedeng non-uniform or varied. Pag sinabing uniform, it means, okay, the parties are bound by the same stipulation. Pero pag non-uniform or varied naman, it means, okay, the parties, the debtor creditor are not bound with the same terms and conditions. Example ng uniform, halimbawa, A, B, C, are solidary liable kay X for 90,000 pesos if X pass the CPA board exam. Lumalabas A, B, C are solidary liable kay X subject to the same condition. Pero pag non-uniform or varied, example, si A, B, C solidary liable kay X for 90,000. Okay, pero subject to the following terms. Si A, yung share niya for instance na 30,000, may condition. Si B naman, yung kanyang share na 30,000, may period. Tapos si C naman, yung 30,000 niyang share, okay, pure. Kaya lumalabas, they are solidary liable si A, B, C, pero hindi sila bound with the same terms and conditions. Question nga pala, paano kung halimbawa si A, okay, B, C, di ba solidary liable? Kay X for 90. Okay, kay A, di ba sabi ko merong condition, kay B, meron siyang period, kay C, pure. Ang question, pwede bang singilin ni X si A? The answer of course is yes, pero for 30 lang. Why? Kasi yung share ni C, due and demandable na. Kaya pwede nang singilin dito ni X, either si A, pwedeng si B, or pwedeng si C. Kasi they are solidary liable. Di ba pag sinabing solidary liability, ang utang ng isa ay utang ng lahat. Kaya lahat si A, B, C, liable for 30,000. Okay, pero not for the 60. Kasi yung share ni A na 30, may condition, at yung share ni B, may period. Kaya hanggat di napupulfill yung condition, hindi nag-a-arrive yung period, ang immediate demandable lang, yung share lang ni C, which is subject to a pure obligation. Kaya tandaan nyo ha, okay, yung concept ng joint and solidary. Okay, anong pinagkaiba ng indivisibility versus solidarity? Pag indivisibility, I'm referring to prestation. Kasi pag sinabing indivisible, it means the obligation is not capable of partial performance. Pero pag solidarity, I'm referring to juridical tie or legal tie. Second, sa indivisibility, okay, yung debtor, okay, kung sino lang yung guilty for breach, siya lang ang lumalabas na liable. Okay, samantala sa solidarity, okay, all debtors are liable because the fault of one is the fault of all. Okay, pangatlo sa indivisibility, pwede raw itong mag-exist kahit one debtor and one creditor lang. Pero sa solidarity, okay, hindi pwedeng one debtor and one creditor. Kailangan at least two or more debtors or two or more creditors. And last, sa indivisibility, okay, other debtor are not liable in case of insolvency of one debtor. Kasi halimbawa, A, B, C are jointly liable kay X for okay, 90,000. Ang problema si C naging insolvent. Si A and B walang pakialam sa insolvency ni C. Kasi ang utang ng isa, hindi utang ng lahat. Pero pagdating sa solidary obligation, kung si A, B, C are solidary liable kay X for 90 and later on C become insolvent, okay, lumalabas yung insolvency ni C, yung share niya, a-absorb lang to ni A and B. Yan yung legal effect pagdating sa solidary obligation. Ngayon, ito yung commonly asked question sa CPA board exam. Meron tayong 4 okay, possible scenario. Okay? Debtor solidary, creditor solidary. Second, debtor solidary, creditor is joint. Third is debtor joint, creditor solidary. At pang-apat, the debtor is joint, okay, creditor is joint. Illustration. Scenario number 1, the debtor is solidary, creditor is solidary, ABC, solidary liable kay X and Y, solidary creditor for 90. Pag tinanong kita, how much can X collect kay A, the answer is 90. In fact, si X, pwede niyang i-represent si Y, Y can represent X, and A, B, C can represent each other. Kaya lumalabas, X can collect 90 kay A, pwedeng 90 kay B, pwedeng 90 kay C. Kung ayaw mangolekta ni X, pwedeng mangolekta si Y ng 90 kay A, 90 kay B, at 90 kay C. Scenario number 2. Solidary debtor, creditor is joint. Okay, since ito joint, X cannot represent Y, Y cannot represent X. But A, B, C can represent each other. Kaya pag, okay, lumalabas dito, the credit will be divided as many creditors. Kaya 90 divided by 2, 45,000 each lang ang kanilang respective credit. Pag tinanong kita, how much can X collect kay A? 45. Okay? Or pwede siya mangolekta ng 45 kay B or pwedeng kay C. Okay? Si Y, ganun din, makakolekta siya ng 45 kay A, or pwedeng 45 kay B, or 45 kay C. Because A, B, C are solidary liable. Scenario number 3. Okay, solidary joint. X can represent Y, Y can represent X, but A, B, C cannot represent each other because the debt will be divided as many debtors. Kaya 90 divided by 3, 30, 30, 30. Kaya pag tinanong ka, how much can X collect kay A? 30. Kasi pwedeng i-represent ni X si Y, kaya makaka-collect siya ng 30,000 kay A, 30,000 kay B, 30,000 kay C. Kung ayaw mangolekta ni X, pwedeng si Y, 30,000 kay A, 30,000 kay B, and 30,000 kay C. Scenario number 4. Creditors joint. Okay, joint din yung debtor. Kaya X cannot represent Y, Y cannot represent X. And A, B, C cannot represent each other. Okay, because the credit will be divided as many creditors and the debt will be divided as many debtors. Kaya ang gagawin dito ni X, pag nangolekta siya kay X, kay A, bali 90 divided by 2, 45, 45. Pero si X cannot collect the entire 45,000 kay A alone. Kaya dapat 45,000 divided by 3. Kaya X can collect 15,000 kay A, 15,000 kay B, and 15,000 kay C. On the other hand, Y can collect 15,000 kay A, 15,000 kay B, and 15,000 kay C. Okay, now another illustration. A, B, C are joint, creditors are joint, D, E, F, G are joint. Meaning D, E, F cannot represent each other and A, B, C cannot represent each other because the credit will be divided as many creditors and the debt will be divided as many debtors. Ang problema si A insolvent. Kaya pag tinanong kita, how much can D collect kay A? 0. Okay? How much can D collect kay B? Bali, 120 divided by 4, okay, ilan to? Bali, 3, 6, 9, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30. Pero D cannot collect, okay, 30,000 kay A alone because i-divide rin siya as many debtors. Kaya 30 divided by 3, 10,000. Pero since insolvency A, then 0. Pero D can collect kay B 10 and D can collect kay C 10. By the way, walang pakialam si B and C sa insolvency ni A. Kasi nga, joint obligation siya. Now, E naman, makaka-collect dito kay A 0, kay B is 10, kay C is 10. F, bali 0, tapos 10, tapos 10. Si G naman, bali 0, tapos 10, tapos 10. Now, sino magsasuffer ng insolvency ni A? Eh di si D, E, F, G. Yung ka 10,000 na shares nila, okay, hindi nila mako-collect. Kasi walang pakialam, I repeat, si BC sa insolvency ni A. Okay, pero makaka-recover pa rin si D, E, F, G kapag gumanda na ang financial position ni A. Okay? Ito, let's take a break muna. Okay? Tuloy ko mamaya. Okay? Later, okay, mag-send ako ng another part. Okay? Start tayo ng Article 12.12 ng Civil.